Right. Thanks, Todd. We're going to start off looking at AutoCAD. So AutoCAD is, of course, the base platform for Map 3D and Civil 3D. So that's probably the best place to start. There's been a few different updates across some different areas, including the activity insights that were introduced last year, the smart blocks, also some changes with markup import and markup assist, and also some updates to the Google Autodesk Docs connectivity. So let's start off having a look at in activity insights. There's been some improvements to the search bar and the filters, and there's a new uh, information available when you look at the saved activity. So let's jump over. Here we are. So I'm just going to come to, this is AutoCAD 2026. This is the drawing that I've been working on. So if I right click on the, or left click on the three buttons, I can click View Activity Insights. That one doesn't have any. Let's try this one. So we can see the history. I've opened and saved this document a few times. And if I click on the saved, you'll see down the bottom, it's actually going to tell me what I did in that last save. So I can see that I've been working with blocks and I've removed a few blocks. I can see the workflows that I've been using, as well as how long I spent editing and the change to the file size. Now, the next update was to the center lay system variable. So this is for when you're running the center line or the center mark command. Previously, you would need to set which layer you wanted those to be on before you run the command, but you can now do it from within the command. And additionally, on the annotate ribbon, you can see in the center line panel, the drop down, you can set the layer in there as well. Next is smart blocks. So smart blocks were introduced last year in 2025. They included Be Convert and Detect. Now those two have actually changed their names. So Be Convert is now Be Search and Detect is now Be Detect. Now Be Search has changed a little bit in that it can now find text that has slight variations to it. So something like your lot numbers will be able to be detected and included in a block. This can be turned on and off by changing the text to attribute system variable. BDetect has changed a little bit. The palette now shows thumbnails so that you can click through the different sets rather than the way that it was before, where you had to use the arrows to click through. And there's now options to edit the primary instance. Both of these commands can now also be found in the Home tab of the ribbon. So let's jump over to AutoCAD, back to my drawing here. Now I'm in the Home tab and you'll see in the block panel here, I have this detect and convert and also search and convert. So let's run detect first. So this is where we're going to use the AI to try and find any instances of similar uh, objects and see what we can convert into blocks. It's just taking a minute to think, but we can see that the detection is in progress. And then we should see our thumbnails pop up so that we can have a look at the different instances that the software has found. It's been improved this year. It's gotten better at finding architectural objects, so things like doors, toilets, and sometimes it even finds beams. So here I can see these are the different things. So the first one is a toilet. When I click on that, I can see all of the instances of the toilets that it's found. I can actually use the arrows at the top of the screen to jump between the different instances and just double check them. The other option I can do is I can actually click on one and you'll see that it unhighlights to exclude that when I run the convert to block command. Now, if I'm not happy, if there's like an error here, I can come over to the Detect panel and I'm going to click the three dots next to there and I can go Edit Primary. So when I run this, it's going to zoom in here and I can actually edit this primary instance. So I can see that there's two little circles here that haven't been included that probably should be. So I'm just going to select those, press enter, and I can choose to add those. I could also remove different elements if they were not supposed to be highlighted. So I'll press enter again and click done. And now every instance is updated to include those little circles. I can click convert and I now have the option if I want to do an existing block or a new block, and I can give it that name, click convert, and now all of those have been converted to blocks. So when you click on it, you can see it's a block reference. So I'll close down detect. And now we're going to do the search and convert. So I'll run that from the ribbon. In this one, you've got to select what you're trying to search for. So I'm going to pick one of these diamonds with the numbers in the middle. And you can see that a lot of these have different text in the middle. So with the new text to attribute system variable turned on, it should be able to detect all of these even though they've got different text. So I've selected the rectangle as well as the text, press enter, and we've got 72 instances of this one here. So when I have a look, you can see it's chosen all the different ones with different texts, and you could use this for things like lot labels uh, or even road name labels. If I click convert, create that new block there, and I've converted all 72 instances into a block. So that is how the new B search is working. Next, we've got some enhancements with the connection to Autodesk Docs. So we can now support file dependency. So that's things that like a template folder, like your plotting styles, your fonts, can now be stored in Autodesk Docs. And the support files become project aware, which means that they are linked to the Autodesk project in Docs. This, of course, comes with its new system variable, which is project aware. And when you run that, it'll tell you whether the current drawing is set up to do that in Docs or not. Related to Docs, we've got the improvements to Markup Import and Markup Assist. So this is now better at recognizing PDF markups that come through Docs that weren't necessarily created in an Autodesk software. So if you've made some changes, some markups on a plan in an Adobe product or something else, they should now come through, though it is AI, so it's not necessarily going to grab everything. In addition, issues created in Docs can now be seen in AutoCAD. So you can see from the screenshot here that the issue has come up. I can see the description and I can even link to Autodesk Docs to view that in more detail. But this was all seen straight in AutoCAD. If you are importing a PDF for your markup, you can now also see what version of the PDF it is. If you're in Autodesk Docs, you'll know that every time a document is changed, the version number increases, so you'll be able to make sure that you're working on the latest version. And just a couple more updates for AutoCAD. We've got the new system variable called fast shade mode. So it gives you two new visual styles called hidden and conceptual. And that basically helps to improve when you're navigating in very large models. They've also improved the compatibility with different Windows printers, improved the GPU text optimization. So texts that aren't necessarily with the English alphabet are displayed better, including languages like Arabic, which read from right to left. And there's also improved the file opening performance by editing the raster image. It now comes in asynchronously, which speeds up that load time. So that's all for AutoCAD. And next we're on to Map 3D. There was only a couple of changes in Map 3D, so I've only got one slide for that. The big one is that we now have access to ArcGIS data. So there is a Autodesk connector for ArcGIS, which will open up a window. You can log into your ArcGIS account and be able to load in that feature data objects into your Map 3D. There's a couple of additional general improvements. So you can now also use feature object data that is stored on Autodesk Docs. There's been some improvements in the display manager to make it easier to reorder your layers. When you convert from map to an AutoCAD, you've now got the option to change your line weight when you're running that command rather than needing to do that beforehand. And there's also been 3 new coordinate systems added, so for the UK, Malaysia, and Saudi Arabia, if you're in any of those locations. So now I'm going to hand over to Todd, and he's going to show you a little bit about Civil 3D.
Sorry, I should unmute myself. Thank you, Rachel. Just going to share my screen. It is screen number 2. All right, you can see that one at your end, Jonathan or Rachel?
Yep, no problem.
Sweet, thank you. Okay, so Civil 3D. So Civil 3D's had a few things over the past 12 months. But before I actually jump into that, I thought I'd actually talk about a couple of updates that have already hit Civil 3D. So your updates can be managed via your desktop app, but also you can download some extra pieces, which we're actually going to have a look at some of them in the latter part of this. So if I navigate down to my Civil 3D here and go to the details, first thing I was going to highlight to everyone is there's already been an update to Map and to AutoCAD, which have come out, which obviously are applicable to Civil 3D and as well as those products themselves. But the other one I was going to talk about was there is actually this new extension called Tech Preview Autodesk Drainage Analysis for Civil 3D 2026, which we're going to have a look at, but it's got some nifty new objects that can be added to your drawing. So I'm not going to steal any of Rachel's thunder because she is going to have a look at that one with you a little bit later on. But if you need to install or want to install it, this is where you get it from. And anyone that's using the grading optimizer, you need to obviously install the grading optimizer tools. There's a couple of new things for that as well. All right, let's get into the actual nuts and bolts of what's changed. So Civil 3D has got the My Insights stuff, but not quite as sophisticated as what Rachel showed. It's probably more equivalent to what AutoCAD had 12 months ago. But you can still get product usage information. The software will give you some suggestions from perspective of your usage based on commands and functions. And you can also get the activity insights per drawing. So let's have a quick look at that. So if I look at here, this is my Civil 3D 2026. There has been no change in terms of icon colors, which is something Autodesk does on occasion. And there is no change to the file format for the drawings. There's still the 2008 file format. 2018 file format. So the insights here is on the start panel. You click on My Insights, and then eventually it will populate with stuff. I won't have any insights because unfortunately my license type doesn't allow it to track it because I have a not for retail version. But if you've got a commercial version like everyone should have, it'll begin to track all of your history in here and it'll tell you some of the things. It'll even give you recommendations about commands that you might want to have a look at that seem to might improve your workflow. The activity insights on the individual projects, exactly as Rachel showed in the AutoCAD one, you select your drawing, left click on the little 3 dots or the epsilon, and then you go to view activity insights and you'll get the new panel appear on the right. And then eventually, okay, I haven't done any on that one. That's pretty funny. We'll try that again. I know I've done stuff to that file. Right, well, then we'll pick on one of these. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so these ones, same as the AutoCAD, shows you the history, shows you whether you may have compared things, because these files are all coming from my construction cloud. It will show me open, saved, show me different versions. I referenced a file. You can click on one of those things and you can see a bit more detail, but you won't see as much detail as what the AutoCAD 26 has. This is the limit to what you get. But anyway, some nice stuff in there if you want to see how many times you've opened and saved a drawing. All right. Next, we're going to have a look at some improvements that has been done to the surface, and in particular when you've got a surface that is data referenced. So now when you actually bring in a surface from a data share, so this is the data shortcuts, you can actually trim that surface down at the point of creation or post-creation. So you don't have to bring the entire surface in, which is quite nifty if you're sharing data around and you only want to bring part of a terrain into your project. There's also been some enhancements to the analysis. So the surface analysis has been enhanced. That's a little better. And also some improvements when you're actually moving your cursor over a terrain that's showing contours that have a large number of vertices. You don't get the slowdown like you used to. So let's have a quick look at that. So I've actually got a project sitting in the cloud, and this drawing here has got some data already sitting in it, but doesn't have a terrain at this point in time. So I'm actually going to come in here and I'm just going to make sure it's set to the right reference, civil drawings, cool. And then I'll just make sure it's on the right project, cool. Okay, so this surface here is actually coming from my survey reference file here, which is sitting in the cloud. So I've already set the two things linked up. So I've already shared it out of that file, but I can come back to this one and I can actually come down here and go, I want to make a reference to that. And when I make a reference in here, there's now an option down the bottom. Here it says reference part of the surface. So I can choose to do this at the time of insert, or I can do it post. So if I do it now, click OK, it'll ask me to select an object. So it's looking for a polyline, or you can actually even sketch on the screen. So I'm actually going to go press enter and start sketching, and I'm just going to go nuts. So that red box represents the rough extent of the surface. But if I draw this, you'll see that that surface comes in and only comes into that object that I actually set. And if you look up in your surface field in the prospector, you'll see that there's the data shortcut connection to that surface. And there's a new field here, which is the reference boundaries. And there's the boundary that I created in here. Now it is essentially a polyline in the drawing. I can make changes to it and I can just run the update and it'll catch back up. So you can continue to modify the thing. You can also remove it. So I can come in here and delete it and refresh the connection. And that's the original extent of that surface. And then if I actually didn't want to do this at the time of creation and wanted to do it after I'd already made the surface connection and decided I wanted it smaller, get rid of that one. I can actually use, say, this red polyline here and come in and add that. I could pick it second and refresh the connection and it trims down. So quite handy when you're using those data shortcutted surfaces just to be able to take parts of a terrain into a separate project. All right. Let's go. So another improvement in the cloud aspect. In the construction cloud, there's now an enhancement to the civil tools in the Autodesk Construction Cloud. It introduces the awareness of the alignment to the project. So that means that basically, like the little picture over here shows, I can have an alignment that might represent a road that I'm playing with, and that alignment will have awareness of other objects that are sitting in the Docs viewer. So that could be things coming from Inventor or Revit or something like that. So it actually allows you to interact with the other parts of the model. So if you're ever needing to do that sort of stuff, it'll begin to give you a bit more information in regards to your navigate along the alignment, get the profile geometry if you've got it, track the position with changes and create perpendicular cuts relative to the alignment and query the models. So some nice tools there if you're using the construction cloud. All right, next up is one of the big new pieces that they've thrown into 2026, which is the, well, I would say replacement, but it's not really because Object Viewer is still there, but a new viewer. It's called the 3D Model Viewer. It's a new way to view your objects in 3D in Civil 3D. It's a separate window, and you can add and remove objects as required. And they're dynamic, well, you can set it to be dynamic to update while you're working. So you can actually make changes and see it all update in the window, which implies that you can actually navigate away in your model while you've actually got the view open, as opposed to the old object viewer, which was made it static and you couldn't do anything until you closed it down. It is limited to 3D objects, so it's only going to be things like surfaces, corridors, feature lines, 3D polylines, pipe networks, pressure networks, bridges if you've done them, and a couple of basic AutoCAD elements. Blocks will come through because they can have a Z value, and same with text, interestingly. But they obviously have to have an elevation, because if you put them in and they're at 0, then they come flat. So let's go and have a look at the model viewer. So if I go back to here and got another project components in here. So this drawing is something that I've been working on the last couple of days. So I've added a whole heap of different bits of data into this to demonstrate some of this stuff. So there's a terrain sitting in here, or there's actually quite a few terrains sitting in here. There's some gratings. There is some feature lines. There is also a pipe network, a pressure network, and also a corridor. And later on, I'm going to throw a bridge in as well. So we'll progressively have a look at some of the things you can do with that stuff. So first thing I'm going to throw in is, well, talk about is how you get into it and what it looks like. So to access it, you either have to pick an object in the drawing that is capable of going into the view, which is, as I said, terrains or corridors or something of the sort, or you can actually do it from the prospector as well. So if I pick the surface in the drawings, this is my NS, and I right click, there's an option here now to say add to model viewer. And when I do that, it opens up on the other screen, of course. There's your fast shade mode, which is something Rachel talked about before. So this window here is now a separate view of this surface. Now, navigation's pretty straightforward. It is, you got your buttons down the bottom here, which you can use to turn things different modes, but to be honest, you don't need to. Left mouse button is orbit, middle mouse button is pan, and the middle mouse wheel is your zoom in, but you can actually switch them down here if you want. The object list here on the left shows you the objects that you've currently added to the view. You can expand that out and they get categorized depending on the type. And then you also have the ability to turn on and off pieces here. So if I did not want to see the surface, I can turn it off without removing it. You can also click on here and go zoom to, pan to, and remove. So if you want to take it out, but I can go pan to and it'll pan to that object in the view. If I want to add new objects, I can do it in a number of ways. One of them is to do it from here. So I click on add objects and it'll jump me back to my drawing and I can pick on something. So this is a block. If I throw the block in and you can navigate away and you can see that there's it's a nice house sitting on the side of this project. And then up here, it'll list the block and then it'll actually show me the pieces. So if I added multiples of these things, you'd see them all. So you can turn them off en masse or individually. You can also use this button, which is kind of cool. If I go in here and imagine if you were maybe looking at an interference between perhaps a pipe network and a corridor you might have done, and you want to get back to where that is in the model, you actually press this button down the bottom here that says set view, and it'll switch your model view in your drawing to match what you did in the model viewer so that you can work out where you were. So that could be quite handy if you're trying to navigate where you are in things. But I will flip this back to top-down view because then I can pick other things. The other thing you've got here is you can save an image. So if I did want to save that out as some image, if I'd set something up that I wanted to share with someone, click on Save Image, pretty stock standard here. You can just save a snapshot of what the screen currently looks like. Let's throw this out to one of my original names. And then it's just an image file that I could open up, share it to anyone that I thought I threw that onto the desktop. Obviously, I didn't. Where did I save it? I did. Yeah, there we go. I'll just open it from here. There you go. There's the image. So you could use that, share it around, whatever you might need to do. Settings is the other handy one. And clearly these things should probably not be on when the thing's so narrow. Visual styles, it's not as many as you would get in your drawing. There is no realistic, so you can't see rendered surfaces with images, unfortunately. But you can do your conceptual, So you can push it back to that. You can push it into the hidden view. You can push it into shaded, which I was in. You can go shaded with edges, or you can go wireframe, whichever one you're in the mood for. But I find the shaded one's probably the most useful. When it comes to the corridor, which I'm going to show you in a sec, you can turn on and off the components. So perhaps we'll add the corridor in. So let's come down here and find the corridor in the list. So if I pick the corridor here, which is this entire road network, which is made up of a staggering 22 baselines. If I click on it in the prospector, right click, and then go down here, I can go add to model viewer, and it will throw that into model viewer for me. And then I can suddenly see the corridor. Now I'll pick on over here for the moment. And I might actually turn the surface off just to make it easier to see. So these toggles here allow me to turn on and off different components depending on what it is on the corridor I want to see. So pretty funny if you turn them all off, you can't see your corridor at all, but that's your rendered surface, which is essentially coming from your shapes between your different sections. That's the section lines and that's the feature lines. So just depending on the level of detail you want, but you can use those toggles to turn them on and off. The tech preview features, if you want to see your gravity pipes, your pressure pipes, and any bridges, you do need to turn this toggle on, otherwise you won't see them, which I don't understand why you wouldn't have it on. But anyway, we'll have a look at those in a minute. And then if you want it to automatically regenerate as you make changes to things, then you would toggle on the auto update, which is what I'm going to do. So next thing I was going to show you, if I put the NS back on, if you want to make changes to the way these things look in the drawing, you can actually make changes to the objects live. I might just make things a bit narrow. I'm running out of screen real estate. So for example, if I wanted to show that surface, but I want to show it transparent, I can actually do that by the object layer. So this thing's been built on Surface NS, spell. So if I actually set the transparency to that, to something like 75%, that actually applies through to the triangles that are showing up in the 3D view. So you can actually set the transparency on things if you want. You can also just turn on and off the layer itself. So if I turn the layer off, the whole thing disappears from here in the drawing as well as in the model view. Another thing you can do is to show your line weights through. So if you've got objects with line weights turned on, so if I turn my a couple of objects in here, so I've got a few things set up to do this. So these are a bundle of 3D polylines that I've set up just to show you how it works. The other one is, which one is it? I think it's that one. So select all of those and then I right click and go add to model viewer. So these are just some 3D polylines that have been draped on the terrain. The red ones there are my new subdivision proposed lots for this project. If I actually come into my drawing and turn on the line weights, you can see those objects in here have got line weight. When I come back into the model view, that line weight goes through. So you can use that as a way to highlight things in the drawing. So your transparencies and your line weights actually show through in the model viewer. If I wanted to throw in a bit of text, so again, I've got a few things set up here. So all these street names I've actually set to be elevation sitting above my model. If I throw them in and navigate to where they look, you can see them there sitting in. So you can throw in any text, but if that text comes in and it hasn't got an elevation, for example, if I throw in, say, these and add them in, and then if you want to find them in the model view, you can actually, while you've still got them selected, you can go zoom to model viewer. And it'll actually go to the model viewer and zoom it to the location of where that object is. And if you actually look at it, it's actually sitting way down low at elevation 0. So that's what I was warning you about. If you do throw them in, you got to make sure they have a height. So I know this thing should be about 42, and then it'll appear like it's sitting on the surface. So you do need to add them with some elevations, but they do show through. All right. Another thing you might want to show in here is some feature lines. So let me close off a few things, get a bit more space back, turn the line weights off. This pond up here has been made with a few feature lines. So you can't show the grading objects themselves. So these elements, the grading criteria don't show through. You can't add them into model viewer, but the feature line results from the grading certainly can. So you either need to select them in the drawing, or the quicker way to do it is actually go to the grading in the prospector here and go select. It'll pick it in the drawing, right click and go add to model viewer. And it'll only find the feature lines, but it'll throw them into my model space. So I can see those. I can also add in terrains. So I can come over here and I might go to the NS here and I'm going to actually go remove from model viewer and it'll take it away. And then I've got a version of it where I cut some holes in it. So I've just added some boundaries to them. But if I add that one in, so I go add, you'll see it's here, but you'll notice that it's not showing up. And I must say I did do this deliberately. I've actually got this surface set to a blank style. So if I set it to a style with something visible in terms of the 3D, you can see that it's now showing up in my model. And then there's the holes. I can then come in and show in some surfaces. So if I come in here and show my surface for the pond and perhaps my surface from the road network. So I can use those. Right-click tool here is very handy to find things as well as to add things. Like if I wanted to get to that surface in the model viewer, as I said, right-click, zoom to in model viewer, and it goes and find it. All right.
Todd,
Yes.
sorry, just a quick question. I think we've sort of answered this already, but the question was, could we drape the lot numbers to a surface? But
No.
no, because they're
Not
2D
easily.
objects. No.
Because they're 2D objects. You'd have to sign the elevations. There's no fancy tool. I would actually suggest if you did want to do that, it probably would be better to do it as some sort of Kogo point, because then you could set the Kogo point to drape off the surface and have the label being the lot number. And then you would just have to explode that back to being a piece of text. Should be at the right elevation, throw it in, probably be one thing I could think of. But no,
Yeah.
I did have to manually set all the levels on those things, which was a bit tedious. Be a nice tool if it had it, but not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Last thing I want to show you was bridge object, because that's about the one object that I haven't shown you how to bring in. So I've brought in 3D polylines, feature lines, gradings, blocks, text, and Rachael has kindly made me a bridge over in this part of the world. So this has all been done in Docs. So all of the projects that Rachael and I are working on are actually sitting on our cloud storage, sitting somewhere in the world. And in that, Rachael has actually set up for me a bridge that she's modeled in InfraWorks, which I'm stealing a little bit of her thunder, but she's going to show you that shortly. But I can actually bring it into my Civil 3D. So if I come in here and Docs Mollymook 3D model, that's the right one. Here's the bridge. And I only want my bridge. And I want to only bring in the bridge, because if I tick on all of this, I bring in all the stuff that Rachael imported from this, and then it's chicken and the egg. So if I open the model, now in my drawing, I have my bridge object, which is made up of all the different bits and bobs that make my bridge. So there's piers and columns and abutments and whatnot. In the prospector, it's probably the easiest way to select it, because they've got all the different components here, which is way too many. So you just simply select the bridge in the prospector, right click and go add to model viewer. And you will suddenly see the bridge. Now, this is where, even though Rachael and I are sitting in two offices right next to each other, we clearly didn't talk to each other. No, it is a bit deliberate. I am going to show you now the updating that you can do in this. So I might just turn off the road surface because it's getting in the way of the corridor. So as I mentioned, all of these things are live. So if I make changes to any of this stuff, it all actually rebuilds on the fly. So this alignment here, or profile, sorry, is the profile that's driving this part of the corridor. So this is one entire corridor that I built for this exercise. And this is double-edged sword here. I'm trying to show you the speed improvements that they've done on the corridor rebuild, and also the dynamic nature on the model viewer. So all I need to do to my profile is make a few changes. So if I get into the profile geometry in here, and I'll be honest, I do know the level I need to set it to so that I don't have to actually sit down and work it out. So this last IP level here should actually be something like 38.328. My corridor's on rebuild automatic. That rebuilt that entire corridor plus the surfaces that's driving it. I mean, that's pretty quick compared to what corridors used to do. But there's my bridge now meeting up with my road. And then if I'm being really nice, I probably should add in some sort of vertical curve in here because I don't know about my road design quality there, but that grade break looks a bit sharp. So let's just throw in a new component in here, something like that. So there's the rebuild on the corridor, adding in all the extra sections regarded to the vertical curve, showing it into my model. So yeah, that's your improvement on the corridor rebuild and also your dynamic updating in the model view. All right, last thing I want to show you was those pipe networks. So if I turn off a few things, so I'm just going to come in here and get rid of this one because I don't actually want it for this exercise. I have in the drawing a couple of pipe networks sitting over here. So they're relative to the pond. So the light blue one here is a gravity network and the dark blue one is a pressure network. Now you can pick the individual components and right click and go add to model view, but this is probably where you would definitely be using prospector selection. So if you go and pick the network completely over here and add it in, it'll just throw it in one hit. And the same with the pressure network. So this is where you could start to looking into your project and look for interference problems. Now, clearly, I got some grading problems going on with my drainage network because I haven't actually applied any rules to the system. So I probably need to set that up. So again, this is the live update. If I come in here and go pipe network and I want to apply the rules, apply it from here to here. So you can see now that gravity network started to update. I need to update the branch. So I need to run the same thing. So I come back in here, start here, bring this one. We'll go down to the outlet again. And then the whole network updates. And then this is where I probably be coming in here and going, ooh, I'm getting a bit close to that sewer line. Or I don't know, whatever I made it as, water line. There might be some problems here. So this is where that set view might be useful. So you come here and you go set view, and then it'll bring my view back. And I probably need to turn a few things off in terms of the surfaces. But anyway, I could come in here and start to hide these things.
I guess to be clear, Todd, with this,
Yep.
it's all Civil 3D objects
100%,
only.
100%
So no
Civil
other
3D
applications
objects.
that happen to have objects that... No.
So this
Okay,
is a
cool.
pure corridor, a pure pipe network, a pure pressure pipe network. That being said, though, if you're using civil site design, you can generate those objects from your civil site models. So civil site design has the ability to export the corridor out from your road model that you've set up, and your drainage networks that you may have set up in the pipes can actually be exported out as civil 3D pipe objects. So you can get it in there. You just have to do it as that double step. But yeah, anyway. That is all the funky stuff you can do with the with the 3D object viewer with regards to pressure networks, gravity networks, corridors, 3D polylines, feature lines, terrain models, and text blocks. They're the only ones I've worked out that are 3D. There's no actual list I've found, so that's the extent of what I've determined. Essentially, anything that's three-dimensional can get thrown in. You'll know very quickly when you click on the object in the drawing and right click, if it has an option to add to model viewer, then you can add it. All right. Oops, I need to get back to the PowerPoint. So next, there's a few improvements in Dynamo. So for those of you that are using Dynamo, they've added a few new nodes to Dynamo. So one node they've added in is for catchments. So there's a new group of nodes under the drainage section in the Civil 3D library. The catchment creation can be automated as well as flow paths, time of concentration, pipe network reference structure. So if you're using Dynamo and you're doing that sort of work, then there's some new stuff in there to play with. Feature lines, there's now a node in there for creating a feature line from a set of Dynamo points. There is also a predictive node for autocomplete for AutoCAD nodes. So this one is a node to autocomplete is a feature in Dynamo that intelligently recommends which node you should use next based on machine learning, and it improves over time. So the more you do it, the more it learns by what you're doing. It comes from the AutoCAD section in the library in Dynamo. There is also a new node for section view labels to automate the creation or modification of section view or offset elevation or depth labels. There is also some enhancements to the labeling workflow. So there's a new sample graph in there, which is the Civil 3D Create Lot Labels. It's sitting under the Civil 3D library. So this shows you how you can automate the placement of spot elevations and general segment labels for your lots. All right. There's also been some updates to the core of Dynamo. So there's some improvements there. General improvements in Civil 3D itself. Oops. There is some improvements to the Cant rail information. So anyone using the Civil 3D rail elements, you can now see that in Project Explorer. The coordinate updates that have occurred in Map 3D obviously have flowed through into Civil 3D. The rebuilding corridor I showed you with that in the drawing in a minute. But let's have a look at that Cant view stuff. So if I come back in here to that rail options, this alignment in here is actually a railway alignment. So if I actually go into my Project Explorer and have a look at that alignment. So that's the only alignment in this drawing, which makes it easy for me to find. I've already added some Cant data, which is essentially super elevation for railways. But yeah, you can see that data sitting down here underneath. So that information now flows through into Project Explorer if you're using that sort of stuff. All right. Gradient Optimizer. So anyone using the Gradient Optimizer, there have been a number of minor enhancements to the software or to the tool. But there's also been the inclusion of two new objects or two new elements. So first up, there is some controls for setting the global cut and fill constraints, which is this sort of stuff over here. So you can now do that at a global level. You also can create the feature lines when you extract them out. You have the ability to add a defined prefix so that it's easier for you to find, I'm guessing. Otherwise, you'd be searching for feature line 1, 2, 3, 4. There's been some UI improvements. So user interface has been enhanced to show the optimization and properties panels appear on the left. The panel containing the object browser, the optimization, and the properties can be resized. The progress bar has been updated to better show you the process or the progress, sorry. And the help menus have been the help's been enhanced as well. There is also a new interactive getting started guide. So the first time you use it, for new users, you'll get a prompt to have a look at the basics of grading optimization, which can be quite useful. You can also get back to that from the help system if you need to go back and have a look at it after the first time. The two new objects is this one up here. So this one is representing a pathway. So this is for things like footpaths, driveways, or other access for egress or entry and exit. So it allows you to define those regions. And this one here is a ridge line. So it allows you to define a ridge where the drainage will direct away from it. So you can define it essentially as the top of an embankment, so to speak. The optimization panel has also been enhanced. Provides a heads-up display for reviewing and analyzing the optimizations in progress. So that's this one over here. And the last piece is this one here, which is the ability for you to isolate an internal zone for drainage. So you can now isolate drainage objects, so drainage lines, low points, ridges within a zone from affecting the optimization outside that zone. And you can use the zone properties to get in and out of that sort of stuff. All right. The other enhancements, I think, is now over to the tech preview on the drainage stuff. So I'm going to hand you back to Rachael, who is our resident drainage guru. She's going to show you the tech preview. So I would encourage you to download it from the Autodesk portal if you need to. Without stealing any of Rachel's thunder, I'm going to hand over to her.
Thanks, Todd. The tech preview is called Autodesk Drainage Analysis for Civil 3D 2026. It comes with quite a range of new features. First of all, there are 3 new drainage objects, and they are a pond, a channel, and underground storage. As this is a tech preview, it's still a work in progress, so we're looking to see perhaps some more features added in the future. But for now, we have these three. The way that this tech preview works is that you're able to run drainage analyses via InfraWorks, so using the Info Drainage analysis engine, but those calculations are all hosted in the cloud. And what that means is that you can run these analyses without having to leave Civil 3D. There are 3 cloud servers to choose from at the moment. It is only available in certain regions, and those are one located in the USA, one in the United Kingdom, and one in Australia. So if you are interested in using this new tech preview, you will have to actually download that separately. So I'm on the Autodesk Manage under Civil 3D. If you go to the extensions, you'll see down here that we have the tech preview for drainage analysis. So that you need to install on top of your Civil 3D to be able to use that. So let's jump into Civil 3D. I've got set up a little project here. I've got a great big catchment with it's running into a pond that's running into a underground storage, and finally it's running through a channel to an outlet. Now, when you install this extension, you'll notice up in your Create Design panel, you get these 3 new objects. So that's your pond, your underground storage, and your channel. When you go to the Analyze tab, you'll have the new Analyze Drainage System. So let's click on that one there. Now it's asking me which network, so I can click any object because this is all one network, and it'll open up the Analysis Criteria tab. And now you'll notice that all of my objects that are in the network have highlighted, so that's a great way for me to know that I have definitely connected all of those properly. And so I'm actually going to be making sure that I'm analyzing everything from the catchment to my outlet over here. So the process for this is that you need to set up your network first, then you can open up this analysis form. You need to set your rainfall next. So if you open up the rainfall manager, here at the moment we're only able to do known rainfall. So I'll have a look at the one that I've got here so that I can show you. I've currently got 5 events sitting under this rainfall, and if I open one of them up, you can see what that looks like. Basically, I've got time versus depth, so you can also change that to intensity. So what you could do here is that you could set up different rainfall events for each of your 10 temporal patterns for different AEPs and for different durations, and then choose which ones you want to run when you run your analysis. At the moment, it is only known rainfall, so you do have to put this data in, though you can load it in from a CSV file if you have one available. So once you've got your rainfall set up, you can close down that rainfall manager. You can see I've got this toggled on that I'm going to use this set of rainfall, and it's going to run 5 different storms. So I'll run that analysis. It's now pushing the data up to the cloud. It's going to run that analysis, and then it's going to give me the information. This panel, you can hide it, and so it's just going to sit there, and I can still do things in the drawing whilst that is running. So whilst we give that a minute to think, let's have a look at our new drainage elements and how those are created. So the pond element is created, you just draw your outline, and that is usually the top or the bottom. You can then add curves up in the ribbon here and open up the pond properties. So here I can have a look at the storage. So I've got the top elevation set, I've got the freeboard, and you can also change the depth in here. And you can add in more depths to see the stage storage. and also come across to check your inflows. So I've got 2 pipes going into my pond, and my outflow, there should be a pipe coming out of there as well. The underground storage is very similar to the pond. So I'm just going to right click and go to the properties for that one there. And it's almost identical in that you can set your elevations, your depth, and see your inflows and outflows, and set the discharge type there. The channel is a little different. Instead of setting a top and then a bottom level, and perhaps for the pond a side slope, you actually draw a feature line. You set the level at the top and the bottom, and then you apply a cross section. So I'll open up the properties for that channel. So here is the section. So I've got a trapezoidal panel, and you'll see that this circle here, that represents where that cross section is sitting on our feature line. So for mine, the feature line is actually the center of the bottom of the channel. You could set that to the edge or if you needed to, and you can also come in here and start editing your cross section. You also need to make sure for the channel that you set the inlet and the outlet. So those are the pits at the start and the end to make sure that it's all connected up correctly to your system. All right, let's have a look. We can see that my results have come in. When you do click run the analysis, it does actually validate the network to make sure that it is all connected correctly. Looks like there may be some out of date results, but that's okay. Let's have a look here. So the results are broken up into 4 different areas. So you've got your catchments, your connections, which counts anything that conveys water along. So that's like your pipes and in this case our channel. Structures are your pits, and stormwater controls at the moment is counting our underground storage and our pond. So if I go to my connections, I've got a range of different statistics here. I can see status, so I can see this particular pit here. It's surcharge, which means that the water level is above the pipe crown, but it's not quite flooding out the top of the pit. So maybe I might want to have a look at my network here. I can use this icon here to come through and choose which of these results I'd like to view. So if I'm not wanting to see my elevation levels, I can start turning those off. But you can see that there is information like your hydraulic grade line. You can see the max velocity in the pipe and check your flow versus capacity in there. You've got similar things for the structures and also if we go to stormwater controls, that's where we can see our pond and our underground storage. So scrolling across here, if I have a bit of a look, I can see that the pond is actually holding quite a lot of water in there. And at the very end, I've got the percentage available. So 65% of my pond was not used in this particular storm. So this storm that I'm analyzing is the first 15-minute storm. I can actually use this drop down here and change it. Maybe I want to look at the 30-minute storm, and I can see that actually I'm using more of my pond volume available. But basically this is telling me right now that my pond is oversized. I don't need it to be that big. I just come back to connections. So I've got 2 surcharged and the rest are okay. If I don't care, I just want to see which ones are causing me issues. I can drop down the status here and choose which statuses. So I only want to look at the surcharged ones and I can filter it by that. If I wanted to, I can click this button here, which will export those results to an Excel file. and then I have them outside of this because unfortunately when you do close this window, it is going to delete those results. And you'll have to run the analysis again. So this is still a tech preview. Hopefully more will be integrated into this, and we'll be able to see more information as it is fully integrated with info drainage. If you are interested in providing feedback to Autodesk to help improve this product, you can sign up. You notice up here there is some links here to provide feedback to them. That is all for our drainage analysis. So let's jump back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so that concludes all the new features in Civil 3D. Next, we are on to Infraworks. Infraworks, first of all, we've got some changes that have been made to the bridges. We're now able to import decks and girder components from Autodesk Inventor, so you can set up your parametric components there and bring them into Infraworks for your bridges. They've created this new thing called vertical pier placement, and you can see here is the old one on the left. So it was essentially calculated in quarters, and you didn't necessarily always get the top of the pier lining up correctly. So you get that little step, whereas now it's calculated all at once, and you get the nice clean pier. If you do have that ticked on, you're able to set the geometry of the girder ends. So the girders here are cut off parallel to the vertical plane of the pier, and they're also in the horizontal, they're going in the same plane as the pier as well. And you can change that. For example, if you were on a crest or a sag, you might not want that to happen. So those updates are relevant for parametric components, but there are a couple of changes for all bridges. My favorite one is that you can now add piers in any locations. And when you do add more piers, you don't reset the girder attributes. And the last one is that you can set deck continuity at each pier rather than having to set it for the whole thing. So let's jump over into InfraWorks. So this is the same project that Todd was just showing, and this is the bridge that he just imported. So you can see that I made this lovely thing for him. And I probably want another pier on this right embankment. So previously you would select the bridge, you'd come and you change the number of piers and they would be spaced evenly, which if you'd place them rather exactly would be a little annoying because they would move. But now if I right click on my bridge, I can add a component, add the pier, and I now get to choose the exact location where I'm going to add this new pier. So if I want it to sit there, it's going to add that in and it's not going to move any of my other piers. Just give it a second to think about it. Go, it's regenerating now. I can see it's starting to add them in, and there it is. So I haven't touched where the other ones are, but I have been able to adjust this one. Now, if you're wanting to see those vertical pier information, it's down here. So I've got the pier type. There's a properties panel here. And when I open that up, it is this match by surface to bearing. So if you set that one, then you'll get that vertical pier placement. So the other change, let's jump back to our PowerPoint and go to the next slide. So we've got a couple of improvements to the roads. one of which is the delayed road regeneration. So I'll demonstrate that one in a second. And we also have the ability now to set K values on vertical curves. The other useful thing is that if you're bringing in horizontal geometry, so alignments or corridors from Civil 3D, the spirals are now going to be maintained as spirals. Previously, they had been converted, but now they do maintain those. So let's jump back. I'm going to just build a new road so that I can show you some of those changes. I'm going to just plop one off over here. So I'm going to build a component road from here over to there. So, not sure what's going on here. For some reason, the style is not being applied. Going to open up the profile view for this road because I do have it selected. And let's just drape that on the surface. Now, here you'll see that I do have a vertical curve. Previously, you weren't able to set the K value, but now I can actually click on the K and start typing in. So maybe I want that to be 6 and edit the curve that way. Might just come back over to this other bridge here and see if we can make some edits there to show the new road regeneration. So up in the application options on the model regeneration tab, that's where you'll find the delayed road regeneration tick box. So I've got it ticked on. Now, previously, every little change that you made to a road, the whole road would regenerate. So now, if I select this road here, and I'm going to actually select the bridge under it, I'm going to shorten this bridge. So I might want it to be here. And the road itself won't regenerate until I finish editing. So I can actually start making a few changes to the alignment and to the vertical design, and it's not going to regenerate the whole thing until I click off of the drawing. So it's going to help speed up that process when you've got multiple changes to make. The very last thing to show you was I'm still in Infraworks here. I'm going to open up the data sources panel. And we've got this new button here, which is the Add as ArcGIS data source. So you're now able to access, log into your Esri account and load the data layers into your Infraworks model. You're able to customize those to make them display the way that you want to, changing the colors and such. And with the data sources panel, you can just click the refresh button and it's actually going to go back to ArcGIS and pull the latest update through so that your model will always be up to date. And lastly, you can actually publish to ArcGIS. So that is everything for AutoCAD, Civil 3D, and Infraworks. Do we have any questions, Jonathan?
Yeah, we actually had a question come in just as you'd finished transitioning, or as you were transitioning over to Todd, and unfortunately, I kind of missed the opportunity to ask. Now, this question may have to be answered offline, but it's around the map side of things. It's does the ArcGIS data come in as FDO layers, or the same polylines with data attached as before. Now, I appreciate I'm putting you on the spot with this one. So there is a chance that you may need to answer this one offline with the registrant.
I do have an answer.
Brilliant.
So it does come in as FDO layers. So once you've logged into your ArcGIS, you'll be able to bring those layers in through the regular Data Connect panel that you would for all of your other FDO layers. Unfortunately, I couldn't show that because I don't have an ArcGIS account. But yes, it does come through as an FDO layer.
Fantastic.
I
Thank
think,
you very much,
Jonathan,
Rachael.
I think the polyline one might be when you bring it in from shape file as opposed to the FDO. Because
Okay.
you can bring it in two different ways. You can do
Thank you very
shape
much.
import or you can do FDO, so it might be that. Can I steal the podium for a sec, please? I want to enhance my answer about the question about putting text onto a surface. And I know we're running over time, so I graciously want 30 seconds of everybody's time, so please bear with me. Because I did actually discover it might be a faster way to do it. There's no perfect answer, but this object here I actually converted into. Can everyone see my screen? I should check that.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. So you can't do text, but you can do blocks. So if you did a whole heap of these blocks and you did it as attributed data so that you could change the number for each one, then it would work quite nicely. But I just made a quick block out of this. It's a block. Its current elevation is 0 here. So if I throw that into my model viewer, it's sitting down there below the surface as per normal. But there's actually a tool in the software that I actually completely forgot about. When you click on a surface, there's actually some tools here about moving things to the surface. Now, this one doesn't actually move the text to an elevation of the surface. It actually moves it to an elevation of the object itself. So we'd read the block and probably find 202 and set it to 202. So it's not quite what you want. But this one, move blocks to surface, you actually pick that and then you say which block it is, which is that one, very original name. Click OK. And then suddenly that block's sitting on the surface. So it's the insertion point that gets thrown on the surface. So if you want to do this properly, you probably should make a second surface that maybe sits a half a meter above, push them onto that so they go up above, so they're sitting above. But that would probably be the quickest way to do it. There's another thought that colleagues had where you could actually use one of the Express tools to explode the text out to being just line work, convert it to 3D polylines, drape it on the surface. Another way you could potentially approach it, but this one might be useful. So hopefully that gives some people some ideas on what to do. Anyway, thank you, Jonathan.
No, thank you. I'll just get you guys to bring up that final slide so we can close off. We haven't had any other questions come in other than the question.
Oops, I just closed the blooming. Hang on. I had it at the end and then I went straight past it.
There we go. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So the video will be on the YouTube channel, Civil Survey Solutions YouTube channel, sometime in the next few working days, maybe early next week, depending on how we go with putting it together and uploading. If you are interested in subscribing to and getting notification about future webinars that we host and getting information, just general information through our EDM newsletter, feel free to head to our website and subscribe. Thank you very much, Todd and Rachael, for your presentation today. Fantastic, really professional, and learned a lot myself from that, which was very, very helpful.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Rachael. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
And we will see you all soon. Thank you very much. Take care.